Okay, let me welcome to the stage now, really the guy, I think it's very interesting about my next guest. He described him last night as being 100% of the strategic reserve of PhD physicists in the U.S. Congress. Representative Bill Foster from Illinois. Bill, come on up. I love that comment. It just means that we have a real tech expertise deficit in the U.S. Congress, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I guess. I'm best known as being, the only PhD physicist. Actually, for 25 years before entering Congress, I was part of a team that was smashing protons and antiprotons together to make particles that haven't been around since the Big Bang. And so I was on the team that discovered.
We had a discussion about. We had a lesson in fusion earlier today, fusion energy.
Okay,
so
all right.
Are you a fan of fusion?
I believe it will work, and I am unconvinced that economics will be what people hope.
See, this is why you get optimism and pessimism in the same sentence.
Look, the competition is solar cells at 10 cents a watt built in China.
Okay.
And that's tough.
So we got more tough love from Bill Foster.
Yep.
Let me just ask you, one of the things we've talking about recently, we've talked about a number of times, is we paint a picture of the world of AI coming, and I don't think I'm misstating the fact that you see it coming and it's going to have huge, staggering impacts. Describe for our audience the world that you see coming.
Okay, well, let's say I first programmed neural networks back in the 1990s. And so I have been on high alert about.
You were AI before AI knew it was AI.
AI, yeah, and it was a pathetic failure back then because we had essentially zero computing power on what's available right now and what's necessary actually to make it work. Yeah, we were using it to analyze the particles that came off of antiproton collisions back then, and so I've been raising the alarm in the Democratic caucus for over a decade. That the real danger is that when this arrives, it's going to lower the market value of a lot of human labor to near zero. That everyone who is busy basically monetizing their expertise is going to have their personal business model put at risk. And in fact, there's a lot of sort of not double speak, but inconsistent business plans being promoted by everyone getting behind AI. Because, for example, if they all come into my office saying, okay, here's our wonderful AI product that we're making, and we're going to use it to replace $1,000 an hour lawyers. And then they imagine, okay, that's great. And then they imagine they'll be able to capture the $1,000 an hour salaries for these lawyers. No, what will happen is that everyone will have in their pocket the best team of lawyers that's ever existed for free or near free, and that the market value of lawyers' time will go to zero. Which will have a number of interesting effects. They're kind of dueling narratives on this. One of them is, oh, it's going to be wonderful. This will increase the productivity of everyone on Earth, and so that everyone will be wonderful and wealthy. The other one is, no one will be able to compete with the robots built by the robots in the factory, and all wealth will be delivered to the one person who owns that robot factory, or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, whoever it's trying to, or some Chinese person we haven't yet heard of. And so this is these dueling narratives. And when I think about that, the best explanation of how that might play out, I think, is there are two examples. One of them is airline pilots. Well, let's see, the first one, the bad one, I'll do that first, is farmers. Because farmers for the last 100 years have seen their productivity go up with technology. But because there's sort of a fixed amount of food that we need, then when their productivity goes up by a factor of 10, we need 10 times fewer farmers than we used to. And that is sort of what small town America and small town everywhere has been living through for the last decades. And a counterexample of that is airplane pilots, who also have gotten more productive through technology. The number of passenger miles per year that an airplane pilot can generate has gone up by a huge factor. And as a result, the price of airplane travel has gone way down in real terms, and the demand has exploded. And so that's the difference. It's a question of what is the demand curve. As AI, when the robots show up, everything gets cheaper. And the question is whether for a much lower level of price, the demand will just become enormous. For example, I think it's plausible when everyone has free lawyers, the cost of filing a lawsuit is going to go to zero. All right, and so think that through. If you're thinking of defending yourself against lawsuits, when everyone can get out their cell phone and put a 300-page complaint against something that your company just did. So there's a lot of things we have to think about when AI, but the big thing, the big effects are going to be first to democratize the access to expertise and to lower the market value of a lot of human labor that is associated with monetizing your expertise.
So what time scale do you estimate this will happen in?
It will be different in different sectors. I'm the lead Democrat on the subcommittee of banking in the U.S. House. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about the impact on the financial services business. And the big change that's going to happen there is agentic AI. Because in the near future, probably a couple years from now, almost all consumers, you're not going to be dealing directly with a consumer anymore. You're going to be dealing with the consumer's AI agent. And that is going to change everything. It's going to have a lot of scary implications, for example, for the banking system. If you think of what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank failure, that thing took maybe 24 hours. When the morning after that happened, we had our early morning Zoom with the FDIC people, and they looked shell-shocked. They had never seen a run on a bank happen at that speed, but it happened because there were a bunch of venture capitalists all on the same signal chain, and they sort of gossiping, I just pulled my money out of Silicon Valley Bank because I heard it was in trouble, and then 24 hours later, all the money was pulled out. And that happened sort of at the speed of internet gossip. All right, now when everyone has their AI agent, that one of the standing instructions to your
all the AI agents are going to gossip?
Well, they're going to be understanding rules to monitor Reddit. And if you hear any rumors on any of the subreddits that this bank's in trouble, just get my money the heck out. All right? And so you're going to have these runs that'll happen in 20 minutes, not 20 hours. And this is, we're not ready for that. And, they're the only entity that has enough muscle to stop that is the Federal Reserve, but we're going to have to get the payment rails and everything ready to go, so the minute that happens, that we have all the agreements in place, all the assets pledged, all the haircuts negotiated, so that a bank can actually have the Federal Reserve on a moment's notice step in and support the bank against a run.
So, Bill, you see the future rushing at us, and you see robotics and AI agents, and you see a lot of vulnerabilities, but you see it in such definitive terms. And I should tell you all that I put a lot of weight on what Bill says. He's also someone who's built things and made things. He and his brother at 19 years old, developed, the biggest theater lighting company business in America.
Right, including, I was electronic theater controls, so I started when I was 19. And actually, when I was 23, I designed and programmed the control system for the Disneyland Main Street Electrical Parade.
How many of you saw that?
What?
You saw Bill Foster production right there.
That's right.
So when you're,
if I'm not wrong, I believe that our equipment is being used at this venue today.
Oh, there we go. I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I love this room. So, but I think one of the interesting things about that question of connecting hardware and things you built, and as I hear you talk about robotics and systems and algorithms, is one where I guess my question is, it's rushing at us. Do we run away? Do we try and stop it? Do you think it's a mistake for government to be investing so much to try to speed it up? And what do you think the consequences of losing that so-called race to China are?
Well, we have to walk this very narrow path between becoming China. Well, the width of the path may be negative. It may be over-constrained, and that there is no path between the two barriers that we have to live with. Because, the danger of, there are multiple barriers. Another one, which you probably don't have time to talk about, is existential risk, which is non-trivial. And it's you should have a whole long discussion of that.
Well, I'm bringing in, not today, but another day, Jan Tallinn, who's funded the Future of Life Institute at Cambridge.
So that is a non-trivial risk separate from this. And so that the dangers that we face are either having China set all the rules and deploy all the technology. Already it's happening that all of these AI systems are being used to monitor the citizens of lots of other sort of borderline democracies or non-democracies who are very happy to get all of the cameras and all the AIs looking at cameras, buy them from China, who sort of accidentally on purpose maintains their own private feed so they can blackmail everyone relevant. And it's just not healthy. That's a huge set of risks on that side. And then there's the risk of us becoming like China. And so that the idea that we're just let AI firms decide what the rules of the road are an equally tough barrier that we have to keep an eye on.
Should we, the administration's been rolling out, major investment strategies, coming in, speeding this up. We're having, we've had a number of these people from the administration come in today to talk about the AI agenda. Was with Michael Kratsios the other day. Are they selling and pushing something that you think ought to be untouched? I mean, I guess what should our relationship be with the technological dimensions of growth and advancement? I mean, you're sort of a pro-innovation guy who is a doomsday guy too,
Well, as are everyone who's technically savvy in this understands. It's a personal decision about whether they're willing to ignore the risks. It's one of these things like nuclear war where people don't think about it. As a species, we ignore tail risk. We do, because if you wake up every day and worry about nuclear war, you don't.
So what does it do, Bill, to the social contract in America? What becomes the responsibility? As I sort of look at it, it's government, it's the private sector, it's communities, it's whatever other organizations out there. What does that social contract around being an American mean in the future?
Well, the toughest part is that it attacks your sense of self-worth. I represent Belvedere, which has the old Chrysler assembly plant that was a big part of settling the UAW strike. And so I spent a lot of time talking with the UAW personnel there. And there was a retired UAW guy who described to me how he had spent 15 years on the line. The car would roll down and he'd make a perfect weld at a certain place in the car. And that's what he was so proud of, that he could really do a great job on that weld. And then one day they installed a welding robot that did that much better. And I felt that because one of the things I was most proud of in all my time working in physics and in my company before that was that I could always write computer software that ran 30 times faster than anyone else's. They used to call me Damn Fast Foster at Fermilab because my software ran damn fast and everyone used it because they didn't want to wait 30 times longer. And so I was very proud of that.
Now you've moved to a very slow-moving Congress.
That's right. But I realized about 15 or 20 years ago that a modern compiler can actually write faster code than I can because it sees the innards of the computer and all the pipeline latencies and the cache miss penalties and all this sort of stuff that are too complicated for a human brain to do. And so it was, it took a little bit out of my self-esteem to realize that, anyone operating this, a modern compiler can write code as fast as mine. And, it's tough. And when we realize we're all in this together, that I had this really scary demonstration given to me a few months ago, which was architecture. And the way this worked is that you say, okay, here's my plot of land. And you're talking to this AI architect. And here's where all the electrical connections are and the driveway and the sewer connections and all this. And here's the topology. Now, I want a house in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright on that with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms or whatever. And so with a delay of 30 seconds, it plunked down one candidate design. And then 30 seconds later, another one from a different period in Frank Lloyd Wright's output. And then they were really good. And for each one of these, you could do a photorealistic walkthrough and say, here's what it's going to look like sitting at your kitchen table looking at the sunrise in March, right? And you think, what does it mean to be someone with an architecture degree and a lot of student debt in a world where that exists? And it's more than just that, because when you're all done deciding what you wanted, for each of these, it would give you a cost estimate. And then you could try, oh, that's too expensive, one fewer bathroom, and then it would rework the design. The same conversation you would have with a human architect, sort of with weekly meetings, is now happening once every 30 or 45 seconds with us. And so, what does it mean to be someone with an architecture degree and a lot of student debt in that world? And so this is the same thing that farmers have been going through, and factory workers for a long time. And when we realize that we're all in this together, that I think then maybe that's the best hope, to really, understand that all of us will have to be proud of something besides our ability to be the best in the world at solving math problems.
You are the ranking member on Subcommittee on Financial Institutions and Monetary Policy. You remember the House?
Hopefully going to be the chair. If
I heard. I hear you're. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with Bill, so he was like saying, "Hey, I'm soon to be chair." After the next election. So, you're expecting.
I'm just saying that if you apply the 12-point shift that we saw in Tennessee a couple days ago, apply that to sitting Republicans. There's like 45 of them that would have lost their election.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
On affordability. So you are a numbers guy. We've been talking about the difference between people who govern by numbers and data or govern by feelings. That's what Dave Schweikert said. He's a numbers guy. But he's going to run for governor in Arizona, so we'll see how that goes.
But he's a numbers guy, so he's getting the heck out of the House.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the future of money. I mean, we've got Citi and Coinbase, supporting today's conversation, also NVIDIA, and I'm just sort of interested, in your role. You and I have had a discussion about stablecoin. We've discussed about the rise of digital assets and what they're going to do to banking. I'm just also interested in the role of money and transactions and how are we going to? Is that going to seem like an archaic discussion 5 years from now?
Well, I think that this distinction between stablecoins and crypto and all this is going to look less important. The big competitor that I see out there is if you look at what India is doing. In India, they have a system where there's a national ID system. Everyone has a cell phone, and if you want to give a pauper 3 rupees, you both get out your cell phones, you smile at your cell phone, do the biometric login, authenticate to your bank account, you transfer 3 rupees from your bank account to his, 0 fees, all right? And that has, everyone who issues credit cards on kind of high alert. And India is now selling that open source software to, Indonesia, Malaysia, significant.
Well, I think you can do that. I mean, if I'm not wrong, and there's a woman, Rachel, here, who'll tell me if I'm wrong, yell at me if I am. But I think you can do that with Citi now. With I think you can do it with Coinbase wallets. I think you can do it with Visa.
But it has nothing to do with crypto. I mean, these are, one of the things that I think the crypto world is tumbling onto is that people actually don't want non-reversible transactions. That if you're carrying a significant part of your net worth in some wallet in your cell phone, and then some criminal drags you into an alley and puts a gun to your head and says, get out your cell phone, transfer all your crypto to me, that you want to, or transfer
God, I had not even thought about that.
Transfer ownership of your house.
Yeah, okay.
Under those circumstances, you really want to go to a trusted third party that can reverse that transaction. You convince them that the transaction was mistaken or fraudulent or coerced, and reverse it. And that's what people want. Okay, and a big part of the value proposition for credit cards is that you have some fraud insurance. And so people are realizing that the founding principle of Bitcoin is something that people really don't want. And I went to a Federal Reserve conference recently on the future of payments, and was struck by the fact that actually the use of crypto for payments is decreasing. Despite the fact that we did all this deregulation, the amount of consumer use of crypto for payment purposes is actually going down. They prefer, Zelle-type convenience, which ultimately relies on a trusted third party in case things go off the rails. And so I think that's one of the things that we will look back on this period in retrospect.
Does stablecoin strengthen the dollar globally? I mean, there's been this view that we've sanctioned so many countries and people around the world that it's part of what's driven the BRICS to say, hey, we need to end the reserve currency status of the dollar, put together new baskets of currencies. And then we have now, digital currencies being, traded. We've got crypto. Does stablecoin kind of a surreptitious way of reasserting the dollar globally?
No, I think, we've talked to significant foreign entities. A lot of them are looking to diversify out of the dollar, and if you ask them why, it's because of the behavior of the Trump administration. They used to depend on the United States in many ways that they've learned they cannot anymore. And it's going to take us generations to attempt to repair that, and I don't know if we truly will be able to. I had a representative of the Japanese embassy in earlier today, and we had a very frank discussion about how they can't really trust the nuclear shield of the United States anymore because of things that have been said by our sitting president.
So are they going to get their own nuclear weapons?
It is we have expended a lot of...
That would be big news.
Yeah, we have expended a lot of political capital in the past stopping very advanced nuclear weapons programs in South Korea, in Japan, in Taiwan. I'm talking about like 20, 30 years ago, all right? And it makes the arguments we made then successfully are much harder to make now.
Well, at one point, it's a very interesting point, because at one point Henry Kissinger called Japan, the most advanced non-declared nuclear weapons nation.
sure.
in the
Yeah, no,
world.
they have a
Not that they
huge
had weapons,
inventory.
but they had the most weapons-grade plutonium in the world.
Yep. Which
other than
was
the
a
United States.
strategic asset. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then they shipped it out. Now,
Well, yeah,
they-
if
they-
you just look at what we've done, and it's not only the Trump administration, the Obama administration, and the Europe. Ukraine gave up the world's third largest nuclear weapons inventory
Right.
in return for a promise of territorial
Right.
integrity. All right, and the fact that we threw them under the bus is a lesson that has been learned. And if you look what happened to Gaddafi, all right, who also gave up his thing, and so when he got in trouble, we just let him, twist
Right.
slowly in the wind and die the way he died. If I was in Obama's position at that point, I would have said, you are a complete scum of human being, but you gave up your nuclear program, so here's the keys to a villa in Switzerland for the rest of your life. That there should be,
Right.
that is a mistake that the whole world made back then.
Real quick, I love making like old historical references that half the room doesn't remember because they're too young. But in April 2000, cover of Wired magazine, Bill Joy wrote an article. Did you read Wired back then?
Oh, occasionally. I was busy building
You were a
my
Scientific
business.
American guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and or Popular Mechanics.
Physical
maybe.
Review.
Yeah, but he wrote an article called "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us," and his prediction was that advances in computing and biotechnology and nanotechnology were proceeding at such a rapid rate that either an accident or a purposeful demonic act by someone would create mass casualty realities for humankind at that time. Do you think you're the new Bill Joy, and do you think the future needs us?
Well, I think there are real risks. I mean, probably the biggest short-term risk is that some bad guy or depressed suicidal person will take advantage of the fact that these large language models are very good at biotechnology to engineer a virus. This is the standard fear, and it is really scary. The single scariest new technology are these desktop gene synthesizers, where you can just build whatever DNA or RNA you think you need for some purpose. And there are controls supposedly being built into some of these that are being built in the West, and I'm pretty confident they're not solid controls being built into Chinese-made equipment that can do this. And there's a famous problem that I think a Stanford professor gives his entering freshman class. He said, just imagine that every phone on Earth, there was an app pre-installed, and you open up the app and there's a button, and when you press that button, the world ends. How long would the world live? Okay, and the answer is some fraction of a second. And so, but the problem is when you have every depressed graduate student in biology has on their desk the ability to resurrect smallpox or create a new and worse virus, that is a risk we do not have under control. And
so, ladies and gentlemen, do not judge me. Do not judge me. But I always actually love my conversations with Bill Foster. Congressman Bill Foster from Illinois, thank you so much. Dave, my friend, have a good trip. Have a good trip. Thank you for doing this.